What's up, everybody? My guest, it looks like came in and set up his audio and stuff, so we'll give him a few minutes to see if he shows back up and wants to talk. There we've got why it did that and added them back to the scene. I don't know, but um, anyway, we'll wait around for a few minutes and see if he comes back in or whatever or not. Um, I'm having trouble. Sorry, my hands are in front of the screen and everything. I was having trouble getting people out. What's up, Filbert? What's up, PC? Good to see you guys. Coming to you from another strange, undisclosed location again. Uh, what's up, Trees? Good to see you. But yeah, it showed me that he came in and set up his audio and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. Uh, Maybe he'll come back in here in a minute. I hope. What's up? What's up, Ray? Good to see you. Um, I don't know, but I'm here. I don't think it's a case of he didn't show up. I mean, it might be, but we'll wait. We'll wait around and see and talk a little bit, and yeah. I put the Bible up in the background just for the hotel room came with a Bible, so you know, but uh, but yeah. Today I'm the Kentucky atheist coming to you live from Ohio. But yeah, the been hanging out here at a hotel with the family for a couple days, doing some stuff and having a good time or whatever. But I hope he shows back up. Hold tight, everyone. I'll be. You may still be able to hear me, but you may not. The Yeah, I mean, he hasn't emailed me or anything saying he hasn't is having any problems or whatever. Uh, I'm in Ironton, Ohio. Uh, but what's up, deconverted man? How you doing? If we'll give him a little bit of time, and if he doesn't show up, I'll just post the link and we'll do an open panel and still hang out for a couple hours. At the end of this, it's going to end right at 5 o'clock. Everybody will be forwarded over to Dave's channel, Captive Desk. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah. Hold on a second, guys. I'll be right back. Waiting for you. So he's trying to show up. Let's see if what have we got here? Um, let's see. I will email him the link again. Come on, stop. Sorry, guys. The sorry to have to keep messing with stuff here. I don't even know if you can hear or see me when I do that. Um, but you know, let me get the comments back up. Anything spontaneous I did lately? Utter madness. Trees, good to see you. Oh, there we go.
I was on a different. I clicked on the other link. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, did it take you somewhere different?
Yeah, it did. I was there at like 45. I was wondering where you were.
Yeah, I seen you had tried to, or I seen that you had logged in and whatever at first, but yeah. Anyway, hey man, good to meet you.
Hey, good to meet you too, man. I appreciate the rather have the conversation than the fourth rebuttal video, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I've there's a resurrection video somewhere on my channel. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it's still public or not, but yeah. I mean, I think that if there's an opportunity to have a discussion about it, that always ends up better because then if I do have some rebuttal or some pushback against what you say, then there's always like you have the opportunity to correct that or whatever, you know. So
Got you.
I just like that better, and I try to find people to have conversations with. It's not always easy.
I saw you did something with Kent Hovind. That conversation made me laugh. Not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good.
Yeah, I've debated Kent twice now. That most recent one that you're seeing, it was fun or whatever. Kent's almost like the obligatory atheist debate.
Yeah.
Uh, and I live in Eastern Kentucky, which is full of young Earth creationists.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, it's debating Kent Hovind for me is just something I wanted to do. Just I didn't. I even made it a point to say during the debate, like I didn't prepare for this. I'm here and we'll have the conversation. And
Yeah.
um, you know, you you are I guess just ask it that way. You don't take to the young Earth creationist position. I take it.
I personally don't, but I'm not against it
Hold
either.
on, I can't hear you.
All right. Hold up. Let me try to see if I can turn myself up.
Hold on, I can't hear you.
Okay.
Why can I not hear you?
Do you hear me better now?
If I go out, I'll be right back.
I'm trying to turn up my gain. Do you hear me? Okay. Look at these trees at the art park, man. That's funny. That's funny. It's happened a lot, chat. The breakdown in communication. Let me know if I'm too hot in the mic over here. Well, while he's gone, I'm going to ask the chat, how many of you would classify yourselves as strict atheist versus agnostic? I'm just curious where everybody's at on that. I see a laughing face. Okay, I'm good now. Good to know. Skeptical atheist reporting in. All right, fair enough. All right, there he is. There he is.
Can you hear me now?
I can definitely hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I'm using my phone to do this, and a call came in, and it screwed everything up for some reason. But yeah, fixed now. All right. Yeah. So I didn't hear what you said after I said the young Earth creationist position.
So I would classify myself if I'm leaning towards a position on old Earth or whatever you want to call that. But I'm sympathetic to the young Earth creationists' degree of faith in Scripture.
Yeah.
Like not in the sense that I'm like against. I'm not taking a position one way or the other. I guess I would say I'm just more. If you were to narrow me down to a position, I'm probably more in the old Earth side.
Yeah. But you still take to that everything was created in a special creation event, and we descended from two people.
So let's start with the nitty gritty here. I mean, when you're talking about like the origin of the universe and stuff like that. So just as a background, I actually grew up kind of like, because I heard your testimony in one of your videos that you did recently last week. I just wanted to like kind of check out your channel and stuff like that and where you came from. So I kind of grew up in a Christian household, but I hated going to church. So I was like what you'd call a creaster. Like I only went in Christmas and Easter. Went to college, kind of realized I didn't really believe in this stuff. I read something in Matthew from Jesus that I've not come to bring peace but a sword. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
this is not what I grew up with, and decided to become like, or decided I'd have to reject this because it's not something that I truly believe. So I was like agnostic atheist, and I had this whole journey back to faith. But kind of long story short about all that, like, yeah, I'm definitely more, when I came back to it, it was more actually from, funny enough, starting out as a theist. And so for me, the God's existence, I think, is, if we're going to take what is the more likely instance, does God exist or does God not exist? I would say it is more likely that God exists, just from a probability standpoint.
Sure. I mean, I think you would have to have that position to be convinced that Christianity is true, right? I mean,
No, sure, but I'm just saying,
yeah,
like, even a worldview, because I became a theist long before I became a Christian.
yeah, sure. I feel you. Okay. Well, that's good to understand. So I know, like the video in particular that I had commented on and wanted to talk to you. You were talking about the different arguments that are made against the resurrection being true, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
like some of the things like mass hallucinations and things like
Yeah.
that. Um, I don't actually take to that. I mean, I would consider myself like on the fence about mythicism. Like I'm not. I'm if we're looking at how sure I am of anything, of course I can't say it with any
Sure.
degree, right? But like to me, it seems like the resurrection probably didn't happen, and that it's a good possibility that for the very least, I'll say the person described as Jesus in the Bible, I don't think existed. Um,
So what do you
uh,
mean by that?
I mean, there could have been like some apocalyptic preacher, running around that got a big following, and then later, like these things were, built upon each other as time goes. As if you look at the Gospels in chronological order, I think like you see you see them being written the way that like myths are written, right? They get more and more extraordinary as you go, and when you end up in John, then you've got Jesus is the Son of God and has all these powers, and there's more and more that it builds in each one, which to me follows the same path that like if we were telling myth or legend would.
So I would definitely agree the Gospels definitely develop a higher Christology, like saying Jesus is God and stuff as you go on. But even in Mark, which is most scholars consider the first gospel,
Sure.
he starts quoting stuff from Isaiah that's referring to God in that passage. So like I had a conversation with this guy Chris recently where this idea of metalepsis, when they're like referencing something from somewhere else, it's kind of like what we do in academia today. You're not just taking that one quote, you're taking where it comes from and what that whole part is talking
Oh,
about.
sure,
So like
sure.
when Mark's quoting some of the Old Testament, he's quoting parts of the Old Testament that are referring directly to God. So
Yeah.
Mark is less blunt about it, but he still is pretty indicative that Jesus is God indirectly through the language that they wrote in that period. Because Judaism, especially in Second Temple Judaism, the way they wrote, we can't expect it to be like how we would today, where somebody would be like, "Oh, this guy came and he's God." That's just not how they wrote.
Well, my problem is though is that if we talk about putting those words in Mark's mouth, how do we with any certainty say that those words came from Mark? And
Okay.
I think that there's some problems there with knowing who wrote what. Um, you know, it's one of the things atheists talk about a lot is
Mm.
the Gospels being Greek writings from anonymous sources, and we're not sure how much of that is based on those other texts because they don't exist. We have little pieces of paper and a half a page here and there. So I know that there's a lot of question over that, and it's not that. Whenever I talk about these things, it's not any one thing that keeps me from being able to accept that position. It's the totality of the things that we're gonna talk about. Because it's not like, okay, well, it could have been, and we get other questions. The question I have to ask myself,
Mm-hmm.
and this is going to seem really simple to start with, but the question I have to say is, do we see people come back to life? Do we see people die and resurrect in any fashion, much less 3 days later? And of course, we don't.
Well, then let's address that for a second. So, I would believe, if you're holding to the atheist position, you believe in abiogenesis, which is the idea that life came from chemical processes and nothing. Yet we've never observed this or even been able to chemically replicate it in a lab. But you believe that by faith, or you would say, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if
Yeah,
abiogenesis is something that you can believe without us having any empirical evidence, and we can't even replicate it even intentionally,
yeah.
yet you would dismiss the
Well,
resurrection, which we haven't observed either. I feel like you're talking about similar problems here, right?
you politicianed me there, didn't you?
Deconverted man says we have observed it, but we actually have not. So
Yeah,
you can go research this. I actually made sure to verify before I got on here about this. This is actually something that has not been done, and that when the closest we've gotten to it has been creating conditions that are just not possible. Actually, that didn't occur in the world today. When the excuse me.
well,
Go ahead.
we have observed proteins come together in ways that would allow for that, but we have not created life in the lab, if that's what you mean. Now, just to address what you said, though, it's not that I believe abiogenesis on any faith. I don't. I would never sit and tell you it was abiogenesis. I would never say that, because for me, abiogenesis, as far as origin of life sciences go, is intriguing,
Hmm.
and I think it has a lot of stuff that works, and I think there's more work to do there. But I would never tell you that abiogenesis is true. Um,
Okay, that's fair.
I don't think, though, that even if I take the position that I have no explanation for how life started on Earth, jumping to a creator as the cause of it, or some god that controls it, would seem to be the larger leap of the two either way, because at least abiogenesis is supported by some science.
Okay, so would you say I don't believe it is, but let's just go with that for a second. So DNA is like code, right? So Bill Gates is famously quoted as saying that DNA is basically like code.
Sure.
Um, and so because there's this idea of the DNA enigma, and we can go into that in a second, but I want to address what you're talking about here. So let's say that you found an iPhone in the woods. Would you assume that it just came into existence by itself, or that it had an intelligent creator behind it?
Would I assume it's natural or created? I'll answer the question. I would assume it's created,
So, and
designed.
I appreciate that you wanted to have like a conversation instead of debate. Because if you're right, I'm here to be refuted and be wrong. But I'm just going to tell you how I came to where I came. So, my
Sure.
thought is, if you go and you don't see any instance, and the reason you would assume that the iPhone was created is because you don't see any instance in the entire world, no empirical evidence that intelligence comes from non-intelligence. So
That's
the
not
idea,
why I would assume that, but okay.
but I'm just saying we don't see that, and I'm just saying like we don't observe that. So I'm just using that as an example, right?
Sure.
And so analogies
I
have their
don't think
limits.
that. So you're in that situation. Is the iPhone intelligence? Is that what you're?
Say that again.
Yeah. Well, you said if I find an iPhone, I would assume that it was designed, and then you said we don't have intelligence from non-intelligence, and
Hmm.
that's why I would assume it. But is the iPhone intelligent in any way?
The iPhone, I'm starting to lose some connectivity here. Um,
Okay.
the iPhone, we would assume, is a product of intelligence. So, for instance, if you want to get down to like, I'm using like again
Yeah. We okay. I,
loose terms,
I
but
Go ahead.
complexity. So for instance, the complexity of technology, embedded code. If we just want to use the word code, then we don't see any instance of coding existing outside of being that coming from a programmer. So for
Right.
instance,
So
DNA, which is code, it would only come from a programmer if we're taking the same line of logic. Now, again, it's just an analogy, but this is what I'm saying. So, like, for us to just assume that this code comes from nowhere, uh, I think that's the larger leap of faith.
Well, I think first of all that you make a poor comparison because number one, if you're going to claim that everything is designed because of that, you're comparing it to natural things. That's how we know it's designed because it's not like natural things. We know it's designed because we're familiar with the way people build things. We're familiar with things made by humans, and even if we weren't, we're familiar with nature, which is the very thing that gives you the contrast to be able to make that comparison. If you say that nature is also designed and complex in this way,
Hmm.
then you have to say everything's designed. And if
But
everything's
I would.
designed, then really nothing kind of is, right?
No, because if there is an ultimate creator of everything, that ultimate creator was responsible for the design of everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a hell of an if, though. Like,
Sure.
that's a big one. So also about the DNA code thing. So here's my problem with the DNA code argument, and this is honestly, I mean, if I was you, and you're having apologetics talks, debates, whatever,
Hmm.
the atheists are going to say this to you. Okay, so maybe use it, maybe don't, but it's what's going to be said. So DNA,
Hmm.
we say it is similar to code in the sense that it's made up of a bunch of proteins, and whenever we write those letters down, like the ACTG, we can organize those letters to have different effects within whatever we're talking about within the genome. It'll have different effects on the animal or person or whatever we're talking about, right? So we say it's like code because we assign letters to proteins and then write it down, and it's a code, right? But really it's not a code. That's just something that we've done to it to make it to where we can look at it. And technically you wouldn't say it's a code because you would say it's this protein connected to this protein connected to this protein. And while there's some order to it, and it makes it seem like a code, DNA itself is not a code. That's just what we assign to it.
Okay, but the problem is just like code. The reason it's referred to as code is because it's what it's called. This lag is really throwing me off.
Sorry.
It's called irreducibly complex. So DNA is irreducibly complex. So in the sense that you can't simplify it more than it is in order for it to be DNA. And so it has to be that complex by origin. And the code that is required in order for life to exist is infinitesimally small probability wise if you were to line up all the instances of natural occurrences that would be necessary in order to create a strand of DNA. It would take longer, and I can pull up the math for you on this.
Yeah.
It would take longer than the 13 or 12 or 13 billion years that it took for the entire universe to develop. The likelihood of all the probability coming together to just get one strand of DNA in that period from all the possibilities is longer. It would take longer than the entire existence
But
of the
it could happen
universe.
on day one, right? It could happen on day one. You're given these
But that's like saying
statistics
the
where there
resurrection
is
could.
a
But that's like saying the
possibility.
resurrection could. But that's like saying the resurrection could have happened, right?
No, it's not because we don't know that the resurrection. We don't know that people could come back to life. It seems that they can. Not only do we see things that don't support that, we see things that contradict that idea. People don't come back to life ever.
Well, so there actually have been people that have come back to life from the dead, that they were deemed medically dead. But I'm not trying to get into that side of it. My point is more
Yeah,
from a
yeah. You really
philosophical.
gotta you really gotta play games to get that one to work though. Like people who died and came back a few minutes later, even if we're not talking about the near death experience part of it, like just people that die and come back, sure. Like, but that's not resurrection. That's we were able to save their lives. They weren't, everything wasn't complete garbage by then to make them die. The So, just to veer back towards it though,
Okay.
I think that a lot of the things you're bringing up are like things that are commonly brought up to atheists on this subject. The irreducible complexity, I would have to say, we've never everything that are you playing like the YouTube video too on the side or something?
No, I'm not. I'm
It's
wondering why there's so
it's
much
just
lag.
yeah, it's just lagging bad. Okay. Well, so we don't observe anything that's irreducibly complex though. Like the famous one used to be the eyeball they always used, right? And the eye can be tracked back to multiple times that it evolved through history, and you can see step by step how we get there. So the irreducible complexity part, sure. I mean, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, we've never found anything that is irreducibly complex.
No, but we have. So,
That we
so
can't
DNA
track
itself
back.
is. But DNA itself is irreducibly complex. In fact,
Well,
this is considered unanimous by science. Like this is not disputed.
I don't know of any time that science calls DNA irreducibly complex, but the um, so to my understanding,
Go ahead.
within origin of life sciences, abiogenesis, we've observed RNA being created, and if you can create RNA, which is really what you need, because then it's able to replicate itself, and you get the mutations kick off from there, and it kickstarts evolution, right? So I don't know, and we've observed that we see the proteins come together to do that. So I don't know
If
that.
no, if that was the case, though, we would be able to spawn DNA, but we can't.
Well, yeah, you give this statistic about DNA, but yeah, you got to remember on a universal scale, or even on the scale of this world or this solar system, or however you want to look at it. Whenever you put that on a huge scale, you're still saying that DNA could form on day one. The very first mutation could form that DNA, right?
No,
And,
here's the problem. No, but here's the problem, though. If intelligence, that would mean the people in laboratories cannot replicate this process by intention.
yeah,
The likelihood that something unintentionally could happen is so infinitesimally small that it's
that's
basically
fine.
zero. You're saying that like something
We
has a
see nature
larger
do things all the
likelihood.
time that we can't reproduce.
No, so when we're talking from a chemical standpoint, if we don't even we might not be able to reproduce it, but we can try to understand and then try to replicate it. But you're talking about something that we can't even observe in nature occurring occurring in the instance to spawn everything. We can't
Right.
even observe it,
Yeah,
and we
but
can't replicate an idea that make it happen.
your very statement though of that we don't observe it and it's this huge statistical anomaly still allows for it to happen. And we're talking billions of years here. We don't know when it eventually kicked off. We don't even know if it happened once, twice, multiple ways. It could have been the amyloids. It could have been I mean, there's a number of ways we can get there, right? And we don't know that, and that's fine. We accept that we don't know it. But saying that it didn't happen because it's so statistically an outlier doesn't mean that it didn't happen. In fact,
No.
that gives
No, but the statistical
evidence that
outlier is
it could
assuming that it.
happen.
No, the statistical outliers is assuming that it could even happen, because we still can't do it, and we don't even know
Right.
how it could be done. So hypothetically, so it's a double if. First of all, you have to have the if that it could happen. Then you have to have the if that even if it could happen, could it happen in the time frame necessary for life to develop in
Well,
conditions that are hostile to life on early Earth?
I mean, from that argument though, you're saying it can't happen because of our incredulity about it, right?
No, no, no. It's a
You're
double if. It's a double if. First of all, we don't, or actually triple. First, we don't even know how it could happen. Second of all, we can't make it happen. And third of all, even if we could make it happen and knew how it happened, it would still have to happen in an instance in Earth where life was not conducive given the environment.
Yeah, I mean, but again, we come to this problem of we have the possibility. There is the possibility of that happening. What possibility? Because the way I have to look at this is, I can't say that there isn't a God for sure. That's not
Okay.
something that I can test or observe or anything. And so whenever I look at that, I say this thing could happen. Now, how about the supernatural and this story? Can this stuff happen? And we don't know that it can. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't, but I mean, it seems that most things point to natural processes being responsible for what we see within science that looks at the natural world for natural answers, right? And
Science observes, right, natural processes, but you can't assume the cause for the natural
sure,
processes is natural processes. All we can do is observe the natural processes.
Right.
There's
right.
a distinction there.
You're right. All we can do is observe the natural processes. So if we're observing natural processes, at what point do we interject that there might be a supernatural process that is outside of that natural world, and how does it interact with the natural world without leaving any evidence of its interaction?
So that's a great question. So the first we have to take the standpoint is it depends on what we define as, when we're going with a theory or a hypothesis or whatever, we have to define what are we looking for? Because right now, like you said, I believe that this is probable. You're saying you believe that this is probable, and therefore it's something that you think could happen. And again, I'm not trying to have the argument of whether or not it could or couldn't, even though we haven't been able to replicate it or figure it out.
Sure.
So what we're saying is, what's the best explanation?
Right.
And my argument is the best explanation is God.
Yeah. And so in order
Because otherwise, hold up, just one more thing. Because otherwise, you have to explain time and space, be generating and having an origin of natural cause.
Well, I don't think time and space is that hard to explain, honestly. But I don't think
Really?
I don't argue that time and space. It's one of those. It's another one of those things, like, we don't know what happened before those Planck units. Like, we can see back to a certain point, and that's really it. But what we call the Big Bang, of course, is the rapid expansion of space and time. Right?
From a
Space and
singularity.
time is already present in that theory, right?
No, because it comes from a singularity. Space is not present.
In the Big Bang Theory, the furthest back that we can be sure of is back to the Planck unit, and at that time, space and time have already began to expand, and we're witnessing the rapid expansion of space and time. I don't know that space and time needs an origin, and it seems to be a lot of theoretical physicists these days are leaning towards space and time being an internal thing that is neither created or destroyed, which I don't know why they didn't come to that earlier with thermodynamics and all, but so there's some questions of things cooling down enough for the laws that we observe to, like, take effect. So I guess that's why they don't. But anyway, it seems to be leaning more towards that now, that space and time is something that's been there and changes form, expands, could be a cyclical universe. We don't know a lot of those things. But whenever, even if we don't know any of those things, we have no answer to any of those things whatsoever, I still don't see, starting on a blank slate, that God, especially the Christian God, is a good answer to any of those questions. Because, again, we don't, all we have, really, right? We have the Bible as a source. And sure, the Bible's been around for a while, lots of copies, it's been passed around and all that stuff. But I mean, that's the source we have for it. There's some questions about the Bible that came up. I mean, scholars even talk about that too. Even with Jesus, there's scholars that are mythicists. There's so there's a lot of questions about those things. And again, for me, it's just like, okay, what probably seems to be the case here? And you can post hoc rationalize God to explain nature, I think, but you can't. At no point can you invoke God and say, this seems like probably the answer. Like, you.
No, so I want to jump in there for a second, because
Yeah.
I'm also seeing that somebody says, I don't know, therefore God is my argument. My argument is the opposite. I have a theory for the origin, and my argument is atheists do not. And the reason I state that is, I want to be very clear on this, and everybody in the chat can go Google this for themselves. The modern theory of the Big Bang is that is when time and space were created. You can go Google it right now. Pull up the link.
That's not correct.
Go ahead, pull it up.
No. I mean, I'll look at it and see if I need to revise the way that I'm wording that. But the Big Bang Theory does not explain the origin of space and time, and it doesn't attempt to. It's just the rapid expansion of space and time is all the Big Bang Theory explains.
No. I would like for somebody to pull up a link in the chat to prove that, because I'm positive that is not the case. I'm putting myself on live stream stating this. I'm telling you right now that this is that you can pull that up. The Big Bang theory states that time and space began at the Big Bang, which is why which is the whole theist argument of where you have to, which the whole theist argument of why God is the best explanation, because you have to have an origin for time and space.
Yeah. So whenever someone asks what's your definition of a theory, when we're talking about a scientific theory, we're talking about a well
Capital T.
substantiated.
I'm talking about capital T theory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're talking about a scientific theory which is substantiated and observed. The you know, and fair enough. And hey, like we can. You're always welcome. You're welcome to come back, and we can have more of these conversations about stuff and things. The chat, you know, like a lot of those people are my friends and stuff, and they're, you know, that they may be aggressive, but they're not mean. So
I'll be honest with you. I appreciate you. This is my first time doing a live chat version of this, so I'm thrown by the comments because I'm like trying to read and pay attention to our conversation at the same time. But I do appreciate the engagement in the chat, and I appreciate your friendliness throughout this.
Oh yeah, no. You know, I think that you know, obviously your position. I mean, I don't know. You use the word reverend. I suppose you do some sort of teaching in the religious area. Uh, you know, so I have no problems with believers and stuff. I enjoy talking about this, and I think that the best way we can benefit people on both sides of this argument is to have discussions about it. I mean,
Amen.
yeah. So let's see. This was a long comment. How about before you make assumptions about individuals and what they believe, you hear them out first and not attack the individual, but let have an intellectual dialogue. Yeah, yeah. Well, I try to do that. I've had some that I wasn't successful at having a calm, peaceful conversation, but I think me and Brandon are getting along fine. I don't see any problems on the horizon here. So we may disagree, but we don't hate each other. So that's always important. A lot of people like atheist has a negative connotation for a lot of people. And
Sure.
I mean, even when I was a kid growing up, I thought atheist just meant like Satan worshiper or something. But, you know, as a kid, I didn't know living in rural Kentucky. But the, uh, you know, my personal position is that I have no qualms, I have no problem at all with people who believe whatever they want to believe. That's not, it causes me no issues whatsoever. Some of the things that people do with what they believe is a problem, and I think that many Christians agree with that too. You know, so I don't. I used to believe too. You know, so it's not like I'm here to. You know, I'm out to get Christians or God or I hate God. That's been said before, and atheists don't exist, and all that. Like I'm not. I have no beef with anybody. I think it's an interesting topic, and that we should talk about it because this topic has such effect on the world we live in. Right.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, I will say this to you, Brandon, and you may not like this position, but I feel like that if it's the case that Christianity isn't true, or let's just say like God's religion isn't true, if that's the case, then it's the most harmful evil thing that man has imposed on its fellow man, right?
If it's
And
not real,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, for sure.
if
We're worshiping a
yeah,
human being if it's not true. I mean, in
right.
the form of Jesus Christ, at least Christianity, right?
Yeah, where I mean the death and destruction and I mean and it's not Christians, it's worldwide. Religions go through this, it seems. Um, there's a lot of blood spilled and a lot of things done in the name of religion. And I'm not saying all those people were Christians or that I associate Christians with those people. I'm just saying there's a lot of bad stuff that happened, and if it turns out this stuff isn't true at all, that stuff is really, really bad and probably the worst thing that man has imposed on fellow man.
So when you say it's the worst thing that man has posed on fellow man, in what way are you referring to that?
I'm saying through the um, and from both sides. I mean, from religious belief, people being persecuted and killed, down to the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, You know, the bombers we have in some of our Middle Eastern countries. You know, some of you know, I'm trying to word around things, but you know,
Hmm.
the back and forth, all of that, all the people that have died in the name of. I mean, we have right now. If you take religious beliefs out of the way, the war in the Middle East isn't happening right now. It's
I
not
would
that.
definitely agree that you can point to instances of religion being used
Yeah.
in the name of evil, right? But like you also have militant state atheism in the sense of Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, etc., right? So is evil tied to religion, or is evil just a product of humanity?
No, no. I will tell you. I don't necessarily agree with the how you put it, but the people can be evil, atheist or believer or whatever. I'm not saying that. And again, I don't think that all Christians are associated with the things that these evil people did. They're evil people,
Hmm.
and you know, I don't. I think that Christianity's been used to justify things like chattel slavery, and that it's been used to justify things like the Spanish Inquisition and all that. And I don't, you know, I understand Christian who says, well, those things aren't really consistent with, you know, Christianity, and it's not.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, I get it. I'm just saying that overall, if we look in the history of the war, all the people that have died in the name of God or a God, it's a lot, and it's more than the wars and stuff combined. So uh, that makes it, you know, that gives it that distinction. But it's
I don't
not a
know. Like,
hit on
is that really
Christians
true? I mean,
overall.
I haven't done the research enough on it, but I would be very surprised to find that all the wars combined for religion outnumber the death toll of the ones for non-religion. We have like the World War II, World War One, Civil War,
Yeah.
Vietnam, Korea, all
No,
these wars that
no.
were not.
So, but I will tell you, and I don't have this statistic in front of me, but I will tell you that on the last reading, it seems that wars had the number of people that had died in war may have passed Christianity, but that religion at large still is on top, even of all the wars combined. It just recently, just in recent years, passed the other, and these are estimates, right? Because
Yeah, I would have to look
yeah,
at the evidence. I haven't seen that,
yeah,
so that could be true.
but
I definitely would agree that things are done in the name of evil, and the reason people like leverage religion is because people are so devout to it. So it makes a lot of sense why they can get a rallying cause behind that, and people are going to leverage evil for evil. But
yeah,
my argument would be like it's not religion that's evil because people who are doing this aren't following the tenets of Christianity. Rather, it's that
sure.
people are evil.
Well, remember that whenever I say that, I said if it's not true.
Sure,
Yeah. So I'm not trying to. I think that evil things have been done in the name of Christianity. I think evil things have been done in the name of a lot of stuff, and for no reason at all. Um,
mm,
you know, I don't. I'm not pinning evil on the Christians. I'm just saying if it turns out it's not true, um, then you end up with, was it rational for people to believe? And I think it was. I think indoctrination is a very real thing,
mm.
and I think that while the belief may not be rational, you can come to believe that thing by rational means. You know, so
Okay, so my thought is again like if it can be used in the opposite effect. So like you have
sure,
militant state atheism from Joseph Stalin. It's not again. This is just people doing things in the name of evil, and people will leverage anything.
yeah, but
My bigger
I mean,
question
you're
though.
trying to call
Good.
Stalin an atheist there, right?
Well, he had I forget what it was called, but he did promote a state atheism though.
Right, right. He employed state atheism in a way, but
So
Joseph
did Mao
Stalin was
Zedong.
actually orthodox, right? He wasn't he wasn't he wasn't an atheist. Is all I'm
But
saying.
so I'm just talking about like what has been used in the name of things, right? So
Yeah.
like
Well,
so Mao
we
Zedong
also
as
see
well,
though. I mean,
right?
if we look at the world today, we see that more secular societies are happier and more successful, right? They have
Well,
better education and across the board.
so
But
the standard of living has improved, but actually the happiness metrics have been going down progressively as society's been secularized. So the
sure.
satisfaction of living from the 50s has been down every decade in America, for instance.
Okay. I mean, even if that number is going down, it's still way above. It's still way above. But you have so here's the problem that you have. You have like if we talk about happiness of individuals, you know, number one. you can create a map that shows sociologically that this is part of culture. It's a religious beliefs are tied into culture. The So you're going to have certain religious beliefs in certain areas. That's just obvious, right? If I was born in the middle of Iraq, I'd probably be a Muslim, correct?
Sure. I mean, given
Um,
what you were growing up in, sure.
yeah. So I think that whenever you include all places, though, you end up with places that are in really bad shape because of extremist religious beliefs, right? I mean, I think there are those places. We would agree. Um, and I think that that's what drags that down a lot. And again, like I've, I've been friends with and know. I mean, I live in Eastern Kentucky. No one else here is an atheist. I know my girlfriend's an atheist. I know no other atheist where I live.
Really?
The I think that. I don't know where I was going with it. Sorry.
Well, I have a question back for you. So I have a question back for you. So
Yeah.
by what standard are you calling anything evil?
Okay. So whenever I say evil, I don't. Evil's probably a word I shouldn't use. But
Okay.
even if you want to talk about moral standards, though, is the question, right?
Well, yeah, just trying to get it, like,
Yeah.
because if we're having conversation, I think, and I don't want to say we're talking past each other, but if we can't agree on like terms and stuff like that,
Sure.
it's going to be hard to have this conversation.
Sure. So the things that I'm calling evil are the things that I see as most harmful to mankind and the flourishing of mankind. Uh, Those are the things I'm using the word evil for. Evil would
Can you say
actually
that
be
again?
more
I
of
got it.
one of
It was hard for me to hear you. Can you say that again?
So
You're
the things I would call evil are those things that I see as the most harmful to mankind and the flourishing of mankind.
talking about like net mankind or like individuals within mankind?
No, it could be the individual, just whatever's most harmful. So, like, I think that obviously you can do evil things to an individual in the sense of that word. I'm using evil very loosely. You know, I mean, technically, if I'm gonna drop the culture that I've grew up in, as far as like Christianity is concerned and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, then a more appropriate word, would be deviant or harmful, or like using evil is confusing. I understand, but yeah, what I'm calling evil are those things that I see as most harmful.
Okay, and I think that's totally fair, but my question then would be like, you're saying what you see as most harmful, so are you using your own opinion as the standard for what is good and evil, or good and wrong?
Well, okay, so first of all, I obviously, like, the position I'm taking is as a humanist, right? So um, the although I adopted the humanist values before understanding that they were humanist values, I would still say that I probably follow that view closest. Um, the but like yeah, so whenever and I think this actually explains why we have 40,000 denominations of Christianity. And it's because whenever we look at a moral question, no matter how big or how little, we prioritize, or we look at those moral questions in the order of what's most important to us. And I think everybody does that. I don't think it's necessarily that I make up what's moral. I may decide on an individual basis what I see as moral, but then at some point I have to compare whatever position I have on that with what the social norm is for that, right? Now, that doesn't mean that I'll
Okay.
necessarily do or not do. It doesn't tell me what I ought to do, but it just tells me, like, this is what's socially acceptable, and that does have an effect on us as humans as what we do.
So
So,
does society determine what is good and evil?
I would say overall, yes, but it's not like society says this is good. society does something that's good for society and then realizes, oh, this is better for society, this is good, that other thing is bad. Um, I don't think that they set out to like be created in that way, like to say good and evil. I think that they try to do the things that are best for society, best for themselves, and whatever. And over time and trial and error, they figured out certain things. Certain things are acceptable now morally that weren't in the past. Certain things in the Bible that are supposed to be morally acceptable are awful. I think that changes with society over time, and that we have a standard of morals not because of the Bible, but in spite of it.
Okay, so I'm just putting the Bible to the side for a second because I have no
Sure,
problem
sure.
talking
Yeah.
about the Bible, but we still have to. I still am trying to narrow down. So, do you believe morality is subjective then, or fluctuates?
Morality is subjective, yes.
Okay, so if morality is subjective, okay, so then do terms good and evil have any meaning at all?
I mean, you can assign it's yes, obviously we know what we're talking about when we say good and evil. So there's a colloquial usage of those words that we understand. When I say something's evil, I'm saying it's bad. When I say something's good, I'm saying it's good for X. I think that we understand each other when we speak that way, but I would say that if you're taking a secular view, what you call evil, it depends on how you define evil.
Yeah, because that's my issue, I guess, with like trying to understand it. So,
Yeah.
I'm glad you at least said it. So you do believe that.
I do believe that
Why is this
morals are
lagging so
what?
much?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So you do believe that morality is subjective then?
Yes, yes. Yeah. I would argue
Okay. So you don't
that
believe
even
like
in the
you don't believe.
biblical view,
My last
morality is
question then.
subjective.
Okay. All right. I'll get to the biblical view in just a second, but I just have one more question just so I
Yeah, yeah,
understand,
go
so I
ahead.
can answer it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that. So my question then would be like, if morality is subjective, you don't believe we can call genocide objectively evil?
No, well, so here's the thing. Because of my humanist view, right? I would say that genocide under that rule is objectively evil. But do I believe that there are objective evils that exist without that? No. So I'm going to stick to saying that it's subjective, even though there's a way to finagle your way to objectivity there. But
I guess that's where my hiccup is. I just don't see how you do finagle to objectivity. But I will talk about scripture as well. So my standpoint from morality is that it is objective, and I believe it can
sure.
only be objective if there's an outside source determining what that morality is. Because otherwise, it is subjective, right? Like my opinion, like what Nazi Germany deemed moral versus what we deem moral in 21st century America are different. And the only way we can say objectively that what they're doing is wrong is if there's a standard by which we're both appealing to. And
So
so, go ahead.
yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead and
So,
finish. Sorry.
so that's just my standpoint on why I believe that is the only way you get to objective morality is through theism. Now,
Right.
what is that? What is the fullness of that look like in our world? The fullness of that looks like that in the person of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, okay. So backing up though, so the standard for objective morals in that case, like does so God lays out all these rules and laws for man early in the Bible, right?
The Levitical code, stuff like that. Yeah.
Levitical, yeah. So whenever we talk about like even the Ten Commandments, like God says, "Thou shalt not kill," um, or murder, right? But like 2 pages later, he orders them to go kill entire tribes, orders them to commit genocide. Um, the and you can say, well, those people were evil. No, I'm not talking about the reasoning of doing that. I'm saying that it's showing you there that even the things that God lays out, thou shalt not kill. This is on my list of top 10, the best ones you got to listen to here. thou shalt not kill. Well, okay, kill. So right there, we've made that a subjective thing. Even God sees it as subjective. God regrets his actions a number of times in the Bible, which tells you that it's a subjective thing, case by case. Uh, I don't think that. I don't think that the Christian and I'm not being mean to you. I don't
Mm-mm.
think that the Christian perspective should even touch morality. I think it's a big loser for apologists. Honestly, I
I
think
actually would disagree. I think it's a big loser for atheists, and the reason I think it's a big
I
loser for
know, and
atheists.
apologists do, but
But the problem is, like, you have to concede even up front that your position is subjective, and then try to argue that the Christian one is subjective as well. But you have to
well,
start with the
at what
starting point
point?
that yours is subjective.
At what point does God lay out any objective morality to anybody? Like
The
when does
objective morality is the standard. So, for instance, in Matthew 5, Jesus talks about what the standard of perfection. He says, "You've heard it said, but I tell you." Because God gave rules to humanity to follow, which human beings weren't going to follow. The law was in place until the fullness of Christ came. I'm just telling you what Christianity teaches.
yeah,
Okay,
no, you're fine.
but in the end of Matthew, in Matthew 5:48, he says, "Therefore be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect." The standard isn't the law itself. The standard is God.
Right.
And
So
the standard is moral perfection. If the standard is moral perfection, I think we can all agree that we fall short of the standard. And so,
well, I think that God demonstrates that God falls short of that standard. Um, people who are in the desert and beg for food are given poisonous, venomous snakes. Um, yeah,
no, but here's why God doesn't fall short of that standard. So, like, for instance, even when in America, where we have like our own laws with regards to killing, right? If you go shoot somebody who's about to go molest a whole family of children or whatever, right, with children, and you kill them to stop them, that is considered a moral act. It's not a black and white thing. This is what Jesus came to teach. It's about the heart of the law. So it's about what's going on behind the scenes,
well,
that which is
if
beyond.
it's about
Go
the
ahead.
heart of the law, then
Okay.
that's a very subjective thing you just said, right?
It would
Like
be if it was based on a human standard,
so
but the heart of the law is perfection.
if it's up for interpretation, then my question is, how do you know then that one interpretation is better than the other, and how do you get there? Like,
That's a okay.
yeah, because I think if you say that it's on the heart, then what you're saying is it's the individual again. You've made it subjective at that point. I
No, no,
believe.
no, no. So the standard can be objective, and our ability to discern the objective standard can be limited. We,
Yeah.
as finite beings, don't have infinite understanding of perfection, but that doesn't mean the standard doesn't exist.
Yeah. No, I mean it doesn't. We've what we call perfect. Perfect's one of those terms that it's like it doesn't really mean anything. Um,
If we're talking from a secular standpoint, sure.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you include religion, then you want to say the only one thing that's perfect is this. Um, Again, I think that puts you back. Oh well, you want to say that? Then what reason do I have to suggest that that thing's A, real, B, that I should believe it, and C, that what you're saying is true? Um, I don't.
So another word for perfect is complete. In fact, Aristotle talks about the idea of the telos, which is what everything's end is towards. And
Yeah,
so if God is the creator, I'm saying, again, we're talking that you asked a question about Christian ethics and whether they're objective. If God is the end and God is therefore perfect because he is the end, he is what is complete, he is what everything in existence is aiming towards. And what that existence is in its fullness, that is completion.
yeah. Well, if you what it seems like you're doing is you're taking it and you're putting it so far out here that it's like, okay, we're going to say that God has that objective morality. Well, if so we know that the laws and stuff that God passed down, like you said, it's not contained within those. That's not where it's at. It's within God himself. And if you put it there, that's fine, but how do you ever get to putting it there? There's no there's no path to doing that, and you have no reason to do that.
What do you mean?
Huh?
What do you mean that you don't have a path to that? That's what Christ came to teach.
Well, right. You have the Bible tells you that, right? Like the Bible says those things, but you don't
But you
have
asked the
to like.
Christian how the Christianity defends the objective standard of morality. I'm just saying how Christianity defends it. Now,
Sure,
that doesn't mean you have to agree with the Bible. I'm just telling you that
right,
Christianity can defend an objective standard if that objective standard exists. Now, you can say it doesn't exist, but that's the argument, right? It
right.
more your position would then be that morality is completely subjective and that there's really no way we can call anything evil in this world.
Well, right. But I don't. And again, you don't have to say something is objectively evil either. Like it doesn't change anything.
Really?
Like there is no there is no difference whether whether it's subjective in the way I said or it's objective in the way you said, it doesn't make a difference as we are where we are right now, right? Like either
I
way.
think it does make a difference because it impacts how we go about our lives. So, for instance, if morality is subjective, I should have no interest in following the standards set by people who just have a subjective position.
Yeah, but you don't. Right. So you make that argument, right? But that's not how you make moral choices. That has nothing to do with like. I get what you're saying, but when it comes down to it, whenever you're confronted with a moral question, you assess that question and answer it based on your knowledge and experience and what you know to be like those social norms and stuff. You do it exactly the same way as I do. There's no
No, but
difference
here's
here.
the difference. If I were you and I believed that morality was subjective and we're just a bunch of cells having an experience that really has no external or intrinsic or existential value, then I would just do what brings me the most pleasure. Because it doesn't really matter what anybody says is right, because that's irrelevant and that's holding me back from getting the
Well,
most pleasure for myself.
Well, you're forgetting some parts of that because as an atheist, because I don't believe there is an afterlife and all that stuff, I value the time that I have here, and
But why?
I care about the people that I experience that with, and I care about leaving this world better for my children than I found it. I care about those things personally.
And I
So
think that's honorable because I would agree that's like objectively a good thing. But if it's subjective and they're just a bunch of cells, just like we're all just a bunch of cells, just having a subjective experience, the best way you could argue that the best people out here are those committing mass murder because they're getting rid of these cells from having further bad experiences. You're just taking them out, and we're a plague on the world anyways. We're causing the world to go down, and the earth is getting worse because of us. If you really
yeah.
want to get down to it, human beings are a plague on the earth.
Well, yeah, no, and I would agree with you. I think we could say that human beings are almost like cancer to the earth, right? I mean, you could come up with that argument in any way.
So then,
Um,
from that logic, though, then like the people committing genocide would be the good guys.
yeah, but see that's where the key word is that under humanism, the thing that I'm interested in is what's best for mankind and humans in general. And so if I say, well, humans are destroying the earth, and then I want to get rid of all the humans, that's not what's best for humans. That's what's best for the earth. Um,
But why would that matter? Like, why does it matter to do this? Why to have the humanist standpoint? Why it's just
I,
you're just some cells having an experience.
I, I don't know that life has some meaning that's just like there is some meaning to it all. But just because I don't, hold on, sorry, I got to fix this.
Yeah.
Uh, but just because I don't see a meaning in life doesn't mean I don't care about the things I care about. Again, because I don't believe in an afterlife and stuff, I value the time that I have here as the time that I have. And I care about the people that are here because I'm a human being with social there's things built into human culture and human beings in general. So right, so we're social creatures and we like to interact with others and stuff. So whenever obviously we like to form these social groups, which we eventually call civilization and society. Right, humans are seems to be like a evolutionary thing where we want to do that. So uh,
But so then you're just saying like subjectively, this is just your preference.
Well, I mean, you could say that there are some objective facts in there based on like human evolution, and that
But it
pushes.
has no existential value. Like all these,
Right.
there's no existential value to any of this. This is just you wanting to do this because it's ingrained biology, and you're just going along with it because it's embedded in you.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think there's a bit of projection here because, like, the Christian view is actually the one where your life here has no meaning.
No, no, no. Actually, because if your life here had no meaning, then isn't that the whole point? In order to be saved, you have to turn your life over to Christ in this life.
Yeah, well,
Love your
it says
neighbor as
in order
yourself.
to get in order to get an eternity wherever, it's based on whatever movements you make in this short little period that you're here on Earth. But God, whenever speaks of loving people and this and that, it's all about the souls and the afterlife. It's there's no the in fact the evil thing is being of the flesh, right? Like we're evil, awful creatures in God's eyes, and we're supposed to believe and do these good things to then
Can I respond
receive
to that? Because I feel like
eternal life
that's a
for
really
these.
important point. So
Yeah,
I don't think that's what I don't think that's what Scripture teaches. I think that's what some people say Scripture teaches. But God loved us so much that if you're taking the Christian view, He loved us
sure.
so much that He came and died for us because we were made in His image. Like
Okay.
most people wouldn't die for somebody they even love, but God died for those who hate Him. If it's true, God died for those who hate Him.
Well, I mean, I think that we've seen people die for a lot of reasons. If we give that's true, right? People have sacrificed themselves for all kinds of situations.
But not
And
for those that hate them.
well, maybe not. Maybe I don't. I mean, I imagine there's some case of that somewhere,
There
but I
might
don't
be.
know
I
of
don't
it.
know of
Yeah,
anyone. I don't know
I
of
don't know
anyone.
of it. I get what you're saying, though. I mean, and it's I see what you're saying. I think though that every time that you see here's where it screws me up because every time you say something like that, I have to say, well, okay, this is what the Bible tells us. Now, why should we listen to what the Bible says? So there's a lot of
Mm.
baggage every time you say something like that. And I'm not. It's just for me. It's not like it's a
Yeah.
bad thing. I'm just saying like,
And that's fair. My thought is like I think a lot of times like even when people are upset with the scriptures, which I understand, like I told you, scripture is the reason I became agnostic atheist for a while. All right. So
yeah,
my thought is like it's our hermeneutics. It's how are we approaching it?
sure,
And I would
yeah,
say like if you look at the Old Testament through the Old Testament lens, I can definitely see how people get to certain positions. But if you go through the lens of Christ and he says the heart behind things, and you start examining what that heart is, because he starts explaining that and elaborating on that through the Gospels and then through Paul inspirationally, we start to see a bigger picture of what that looks like. So it's like it's called a Christocentric view of Scripture.
yeah.
It's looking at the Bible through the lens of Christ.
Right, and you have to like accept the Trinity, which isn't biblical. Um, there's just baggage with it. Is all I'm saying. Like there's whenever
We
you
could get into a Christo like a Trinitarian debate, but I just feel like that's kind of outside the scope of what we're getting at here first.
I mean, you're welcome to come back and we can talk about the Trinity. I would love to have you back on again. I mean, I enjoy sitting and having these conversations, and I'm not mean to you or anything like that.
No, you're good.
Yeah, and I'm being honest and genuine, and I didn't prepare for this. I could have sat and wrote down, like, well, Paul said that people told him this,
Sure,
and like
sure,
we
sure,
could
sure.
do all that, but like I told you, it's not about like bringing arguments here. Like I would rather talk to you about what you believe and why I don't
Sure.
accept it, or why I have certain positions and you don't hold those positions. Like I would rather have that conversation. I think we get further that way for everyone.
I think you're right about that. So,
You know.
like, just from my understanding, then, because I kind of explained how I got back to where it was. What's the big premise for why you just reject it all?
Um. So it's there's not a one thing, but I
Okay.
will say like as far as the thing that sticks out most to me is I was raised young Earth creationist. And whenever I went to college, I learned that some of the things they told me weren't true, and not like angry at them about that or like angry about it, but just saying
Hmm.
like I learned that some of those things weren't true. And whenever I went and like uh, looked at those things and seen like, oh, hey, it seems like Noah's flood probably wasn't a real thing. And then the more that I dug into those things, I actually at first went looking for things to prop up my faith,
Sure.
to to because my first notion was, well, the Bible was written by man. It's the inspired word of God. So maybe we're just like interpreting things wrong, and maybe we got some stuff wrong, but overall there's probably still a God. And that was kind of the position I took. and
Okay.
and then as I went and searched more and more, instead of finding things that suggested that any of it was true, I found things that didn't support that being history, and that suggested that it wasn't true. And at a certain point, I just came to the point where it's like I'm no longer convinced that this is true. And
Mm.
I think a lot of people will argue that belief is a choice, that like you can whatever, but like I don't think it is. Like I'm not convinced God is real, and if you could convince me of that, I would believe it. But I'm honest in saying I'm just not convinced that that's the truth. And until I am, I have no choice but not believe. I can't turn around and say, just the same as I can't tell you, well, tomorrow you're gonna be a Muslim and you're gonna accept Muslim doctrine and dogma and you're gonna believe it's true. You can't do it because you don't get to choose those things.
I definitely agree that I agree to an extent, and here's why I took a pause on that, because I do think sometimes we try to put, so for instance, even when people are interpreting scripture, they're like, oh, well, we don't know that this person wrote this or this person wrote this, even though we have more evidence that the gospels in their original language of Greek than we do for all the writings in the original Greek of Aristotle and Plato combined. Or for instance, we take that Socrates existed as a fact, even though we have no writings from Socrates. But I'm not trying to get into that. I'm just trying to say, like, I think there's a little bit of resentment on the standard. Now, you can reject Jesus Christ as being God, but people will just dismiss that even existed, even though the historical evidence way outweighs that. And I think sometimes people's standard for what they're expecting is limited by presuppositions they have going into something.
Sure. I think that goes both ways.
Sure.
um,
Just to your point, I would definitely say, even in, because like faith, you have moments of doubt and faith for sure. But like you, I told you, I kind of just rejected it. I was gone. I was done with it. I didn't want anything to do with the church, anything to do with Christians. But my thought was like, I was so overwhelmed by the idea that there has to be at least a God.
yeah.
And that took me down the rabbit hole. That then, if God does exist, like I got to that point first.
Sure.
If God does exist, okay, we look at all the religions, because we have all the religions out there, right? What makes every religion unique? What makes, like, for instance, why Christianity? And all these religions were talking about what you had to do to reconcile yourself to a perfect being. So, like,
Yeah.
what can I do to achieve nirvana, salvation, whatever you want to call it, right? In all these religions. And Christianity was the only one that was about what God did rather than what about man does. And so the reason that matters is because if we're imperfect beings, the idea that an imperfect being can consummate itself with a perfect being is illogical. It would take the perfect being to bridge the chasm. And the only religion in which that takes place is when in Christianity, when the perfect being came down to adopt that which separated us from him, which is sin itself.
Yeah. But you have to accept that those things happened on faith.
I said once I got to God, like
Yeah.
I'm just telling you how I got from God to there. Yeah,
Right.
like first you have to get, like, in order to get to Christianity logically, I'm putting those in quotations because whether or not people agree with that is fine. But the way to get to Christianity logically, the only way you get there is first by starting with theism. And I think that God is. I have not ran into enough arguments to convince me that God doesn't exist. When I was coming back into it, and I went to this Christian apologetics group, and I came and I just roasted them for like hours. I came in there to roast them for hours. It was Ratio Christi, this Christian apologetics group at college, and most of them didn't really even know what they were talking about. But there's one guy that gave me some stuff to really go wrestle with, and I went back and researched it myself, and I really came to the conclusion between the moral argument, like I believe that morality is objective, and I believe that religion's the only way you get there. Then you get the fine-tuning stuff, like intelligence from intelligence. Then you get to the cause argument, right? So like causes, whatever that is, whatever religion that is, whatever cause that is, that must be God, because God is by definition creator. All right. And so those were the three arguments that really got me on the train to theism. And then from there, I like, okay, if God does exist, what's the one that explains it best?
Well, I mean, I think that you're like, I think that you're trying to use like philosophy the way that it's designed to be used there. But I just wonder, like, because you said, you know, these are the questions you're asking and stuff, but the presuppositions you were making before you asked those questions, did you not realize that those are there, or you just like, yeah, you've
Well,
already came to terms
but I went
there
into it
is a
questioning. So I went into it, and when I came to those three arguments, those were the three that hit me because I didn't really have a good solution to them.
Yeah.
Outside of God, I'm just telling you because I came in to refute it. That was my goal.
Well, yeah, and that's the second thing. You said that you hadn't heard arguments that proved there was no God, but that's not how anything works, right?
No,
Like,
I'm saying I didn't. When I brought when these arguments were presented to me, I didn't have a rational explanation beyond it.
You didn't find those arguments convincing that you were wrong about a claim of God. Not that they disproved God, just that those things weren't enough for you to change your stance that you believe that a God exists. Because
no, so no, hold up, just for clarity. I went into these groups assuming God did not. And when I was presented with those three arguments, again, the three I was talking about, fine-tuning, moral, and then the cause and effect argument, I found the weight of them too convincing to deny God at that point.
So at this point, if I asked you, like, and we'll just say God in general, we won't do resurrection today like that, but we'll say God in general. If I asked you, like, how sure, if you could put it on a scale of 1 to 100 of like how sure you are that a God exists, what would where would you think you fall on that?
As rationally confident as I can be. I don't think we can be 100. I can't even be 100% certain that I'm a human being experiencing life correctly. So, like, you get down to like, what is it, Descartes and what he said about like, I think, therefore I am. Like, I that's basically the level that I have. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that like assuming that my faculties are correct and that my ability to reason is sufficient. I do believe that this is the best argument. And I believe that with a fairly high degree of certainty.
You know what? You just became my favorite theist for skipping past the basic presuppositions of reality and stuff, and not miring us in a solipsism conversation. I do appreciate that, honestly, because I think that sometimes that's done in a dishonest way. Like, yeah, so I think therefore I am. The thing that we can say with absolute certainty is that I am, right? That I exist in some way.
But our ability to understand, like our ability to observe reality with our senses, we don't really have a high degree of that. We can just assume that we do, but we can't get anywhere if we don't assume we can observe correctly. Like, even science is all worthless if we don't believe we can observe the world correctly, right? So I think it's important to understand, in like understanding where I'm coming from here, is I don't think anybody has 100% certainty. We exist on a spectrum of certainty, right? So like with
I agree with you completely. There was no wrong answer there,
Yeah. So my thought is, if we have a degree of certainty, I just believe I am more confident that God exists than that he would not exist.
So highly confident, we'll call it that.
Sure.
So like, the things that the things that, for example, fine tuning and the moral argument, we'll use as an example. If we were to have this in-depth conversation, and I showed you that fine tuning and it showed you to your satisfaction that fine tuning is completely irrational. Right.
Well, let me just take this one because this is the most important one. I think the strongest argument, the strongest one, the one that first initially got me, is the cause and effect, or potential versus actuality.
Contingency.
Yeah, well, you could argue contingency. There's several ways to frame it.
Right, right, right. So you have to have a cause for an effect, and eventually you go back to having a prime causer,
Yeah, the
which
unmoved mover, as Aristotle
right,
put it.
right, which then you assign agency to, and say it's a god. Um, so what it like one of the common answers that's given about this contingency thing is the I'm blanking out today. Uh, the quantum field is given like that. This existed and uh, can be the cause for some of these things.
But
And again, not
so,
proven, complete conjecture. Like I'm not saying it's a fact.
but I've heard this one before too, right? So like the multiverse and stuff like that. But
Sure.
in order for the universes to have interrelation between one another, there has to be something that ties them together. What is that which ties them together? You understand what I'm saying? So
Sure.
you still have
Yeah.
to have
No,
a cause
I
that
get
makes all
you.
that happen. You still have to have a cause that made all that happen. Whatever that cause is.
Well,
I'm not saying
I
intelligence.
mean,
I'm not saying
under
intelligence. I'm saying
I
whatever
think
that causes is God.
I think kind of part of the reason that we see some of the conversations about matter and energy being eternal is part of that, because we don't see that it does need a cause, like that it does need that. The But I can understand saying like, okay, and the conversation usually goes like, well, then what caused this and what caused this, and then who made God and who made that God, and like, because then you're saying then that God doesn't need a cause because God is this all powerful being,
Well, God is the uncaused. Whatever. So, for instance, in order for the logic to stand still, because you can't have an infinite regression.
right.
In order for there not to be infinite regression, whatever that uncaused, I'm not assuming the Christian God. Whatever that uncaused cause is God by definition, because God by definition is creator.
So if the quantum field is exists eternally and is the cause, then the quantum field is God.
No, but again, something has to tie all the multiverse and everything together. So, what is tying everything together? What is the
So
cause of tying everything together?
so that thing that ties those things together, why does it require that it has agency?
So again, as I said, whatever the cause is, if we just start with there has to be an uncaused cause. We start with that. We start with that. That's the starting point. That's all I'm saying. That's the starting
Yeah,
point.
no heroes. I actually accept that infinite regression can be a thing, but like we're not going to go there. That's a deep conversation. Um, the so
Most
so
believable
yeah,
people do. Most. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
that's where
Go
I
ahead.
take issue though. Is it's like once first of all, I think if we talk about like the definition of what God consists of, the all knowing, all loving, all powerful uh, creator. If we do that, can an omniscient being have agency? You think? Because I think it's irrational to even give agency to an all knowing being. Because I don't think you could have agency and be all knowing. But
Well, what do you mean? Why can't you have agency and be all knowing?
well, because if you're all knowing, there's no thoughts to be had. There's no decisions to be made. There's no there's no thinking involved there. The God of that I'm speaking of, that as I understand it, knows everything that will come to be from beginning to end,
Hmm.
and so there's no, if this God's all knowing and all good, then all the decisions this God is going to make are already made, and they're all good, and they have to be. Uh, I think you take any agency away from that God whenever you say that they already know everything that is and will be, because there's
Well, wouldn't that be like actually? I mean, I'm not saying I'm not a Calvinist here, but wouldn't that be arguing that God is the only one with agency? Wouldn't it be the opposite?
well, if you define it out that way, then you could get to that, yeah. Which again comes to that thing like,
That's not my
well, if
argument, but I'm
if
just
if
saying.
everybody is this, then it doesn't have a meaning to say otherwise, right?
I'm not sure I'm following your line of logic here. I'm just saying God, from my understanding, I just don't know how you get to him not having agency
Well,
as creator.
so
That to me, I don't even understand how
so so what? How do we define? How do you define agency?
we get there.
You cut out a little bit. So, um, are you there? Can you hear me?
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you
Okay.
hear me? You
Yeah.
hear me
Yeah.
now?
I hear you.
Okay, there we are.
Yeah.
Gosh, this is
So so how did you? What did you say about agency?
okay. So what's your question?
So how would you define agency?
Well, I'm trying to understand your definition of
Okay.
agency. I
Okay.
don't have a.
So I
How
would
would I
say
define
agency
agency?
is the ability to think, the ability to say I am, to have to be conscious of yourself, and to be able to think and make decisions. Um, that's what I would call agency. To be conscious of self, and be able to make decisions and have thoughts. Is that fair? If you answered, I didn't hear you. Are you still here, Brandon? Oh, I think you're back.
I'm here. Hopefully this thing is going to get stabilized.
Yeah. If you've got anything else open, close it. That's with this.
I
That's
have nothing else open.
oh well. Sorry. uh, so so I would say so. My definition of agency is being self-aware, able to make decisions, and have thoughts. That would be agency. Um, I don't think that
Okay.
God has that though. Like I don't think that an
Why?
all-knowing being can make decisions.
If you had infinite knowledge yourself, you would not be capable of decisions. What would render you not capable of decisions by having more knowledge?
Well, God's omnibenevolent property takes away that, right? Because then God has to make the decisions um, that are loving and good. Uh, even if you want to say that overall good isn't understood in the moment or whatever, like that, God still has to make those. Like, and there's no decision to be made because God already knows the outcome and whether it's good overall. Like. There's no decisions to be made. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to consider. There's no surprises. There's nothing. There's the for the being who's omniscient and all knowing and all powerful and all loving. For that being, uh, I don't know where they can actually have thoughts. I'm not.
So if you
Again,
were like,
this is my.
so
Nobody argues this. This is something I go on about. So, like,
I
don't.
just don't. To me, that doesn't. I don't know if I get behind. I agree with that statement. I don't know if I agree with
Well,
that
I don't
statement.
see, and that's the thing about it, though, is like I don't know that that's correct either. But to me, I'm just telling you what I think. I'm giving you my honest
Sure.
thoughts on it. Is like that being that is supposed to like it's contradictory for to even have a being that possesses those omni properties. It to me, so uh,
Because like
again,
agency would be like agency is uh, one's ability to control their faculties, right? So if we talk
sure.
about like you're preventing somebody from having agency, like, and we talk about this in like slavery in history, right? They weren't given human agency. They weren't given the ability to have control of their faculties. God certainly, as omnipotent, right, meaning all powerful, has the most agency.
Well, I mean, you could say that an AI robot has control of its faculties, right? I think that you have to add that they're able to make conscious decisions. Uh, I think
But
that
but
that's
the argument is that God is definitely conscious, right? That's why he chose to come down and
But
die for humanity.
he couldn't have chose it if he's all knowing. There's no choice to be made.
You still.
That's where I argue at, right? Because there's no.
So
It's
your argument is that God has to do it.
God is a better argument for determinism than determinism, I believe. An all-knowing being that already knows what's going to happen doesn't, like in the, for example, one of the things whenever I talk with creationists, and obviously this doesn't apply to all conversations, but when I talk to people who believe in like Noah's flood and stuff, well, God regrets that, right? God feels bad about it and stuff. How is a being that is all knowing and already knows what the outcome is going to be makes the decision? Well, we say makes the decision, but there's no decision to be made because God already knows he's going to do it. So
Sure.
God floods the world and then feels bad about it. How can he feel bad about something he already knew the outcome of and did
Could
it
I give you an
anyway?
example? Can I give you an example? So, for instance, if your son misbehaves and let's say you spank them because you feel like you have to do this to correct the behavior, but you still feel bad because it caused your son pain. I'm just giving a loose example on the moment right here.
Yeah, right.
One can certainly like not regret, but feel remorse for a decision that they make because it comes from the omnibenevolence, the spot of all goodness and compassion. But God's also a God of justice, so he has to act on the divine justice.
Well, uh,
You're talking because you're asking from Scripture standpoint, so I'm just
yeah,
answering
right.
you because
No,
you brought up
no.
Scripture. So
Yeah, well, I think that we have. I think that justice isn't really a thing with God either, but that's a different conversation. But
but justice can only exist if it's objectively moral, right? If there's objective
no,
morality, because without objective morality, there's no such thing as real justice. It's subjective justice.
well, if if you accept an objective morality, then yes, that's what you would call justice. But I can have justice just the same without that.
Subjective justice, because what you
Well,
might view as justice might be different than what 1930s Nazi Germany considered justice. In fact, I
Well,
would argue for
I
certain.
think what you view as objective justice is subjective justice, just called that, right?
Well,
I
no,
think
the
that it
reason it
actually
can't be,
demonstrates a subjective justice, right?
but it can't be because the objective standard is the one that created it. So, for instance, if I create a can for a purpose, its objective purpose is the one I created it for. You can use it however you want to, but that wasn't the objective purpose it was designed for. If God is the creator of morality, it is therefore objectively whatever he created it to be.
Right, right. Well, I mean, but whenever you that's a big if though that you're throwing in there, like
I know, but we're saying if we're talking
right,
about again. I'm saying that objective morality can only exist with God. That's all I'm saying.
right. Well, right, and then we have to ask ourselves what's probably true about that, right? And that's where we come to different conclusions, is because I don't think that the Christian God is really even possible, um, much less exists. So where we come to different conclusions there, of course, we're going to have a different view of that. But that's the problem with that question, is because we're looking backwards at it, right?
No, but I'm
So
saying we start from the standpoint of does there have to be a God? Again, I'm not like a lot of theists you probably deal with are like, okay, let me come in. Here's what Scripture says. This is what I believe. Therefore, it's true. I'm
yeah,
starting from the opposite perspective. I'm starting from the perspective of God is the most rational solution to explain the world we live in. You don't have to agree with that
yeah,
statement. I'm just telling you this is where I'm coming from. From that, the Christian God is the only one that makes any sense because it's the only explanation to reconcile that which is imperfect with that which is perfect. It had to be done by the perfect being. It's the only religion that does that. So once we get to that point, then I can just discuss Christian ethics. And so if you want to debate the Christian ethics, sure, we can do that and you can say you dismiss it, but I'm not assuming them because in of themselves. I'm not using them to prove themselves.
yeah, right. No, I got you. So then the real question, it boils down to then, should we say that God is a rational explanation for those things? That's really where the root of the question
Sure.
lies, right? So um, I would take the position, obviously, that I don't think that I told you earlier, like I think that whenever you include things like indoctrination and stuff, that then of course God does become a rational answer because you that's what that's the way you believe it. The
But
problem,
I didn't come to God through that, right? So like
yeah,
I'm not coming in with the assumption God is real, let's prove him. My entering into Christianity, because I went to church as a kid, but I didn't believe it. Not really. It wasn't until I totally dismissed it that I went, okay, if I'm totally going to dismiss this, because if this is true, this matters a lot. So I need to at least really try to examine it, like give a fair examination of it. So I'm going to go in there and try to be as skeptical as possible. Let me go to the people who can debate this. I told you the three arguments that I came down to me, were indicative of their likelihood is higher. And everybody's
yeah.
going to have their spectrum of where does it cross. For me, it crossed that 50% threshold. And as I've crossed that 50% threshold, I have seen more and more that I think it's actually even more likely the further I've gone down this rabbit trail.
Well, right, no, I understand that. I get you. I think though that like whether you like to admit it or not, I think that you're still starting with a post hoc position of God because let's pretend for a second we have no knowledge of any religion on earth.
Sure.
We've never been introduced to any religion. We're just all here and we see this and we think it's all natural processes. Um, at
Why do we
what point?
assume? Why do we assume up front that it's in all natural processes?
Well, I was just saying anything other than religion. Uh, right. I was just taking religion out of it for a minute.
But
The
I'm not talking about religion. I'm saying like we're just looking at things empirically, right? So if we're
Yeah.
just looking at things empirically, human society, granted, they were had a lot less knowledge back then, but we've already went through this experiment. Human beings started out with believing in gods. Now, again, that didn't mean that they had a good understanding of it. In fact, polytheism was the standard, right? They were worshiping the sun, the moon, the stars, but they thought they were gods or stuff like that. But we've already been through this experiment, right? So it's just empiricism, and we're observing the world around us, and we're coming to
Right.
conclusions based on that.
We so I guess the better way to say it is we have observed natural processes, but not supernatural ones. Um,
But we've never
the
observed the natural process that explains the origin of life.
that I mean that doesn't
Or
entitle you to then make the leap and assign an origin to it though, and that's what I'm getting at is like what outside of the Bible or modern religion as we know it, outside of the source which is the Bible. Um, what piece of evidence or what piece of reality uniquely points to coming to the conclusion that a God exists? Because I
so let's
don't.
start. Let's go back to Descartes, right? So we
Yeah,
start. This is where we're all going to start. Forget everything else. We know nothing. Let's assume we know nothing,
sure.
right? Let's start. I think, therefore I am. Okay, I exist. Now I'm going to decide whether or not I agree that I have a proper understanding with my senses of reality. Okay,
Sure.
let's say
Right.
we check that because if we don't check that, we can't learn anything. Now it
Right.
is an assumption, but we all as a society collectively agree we have to assume our senses are good,
Yeah.
or sufficient. And so from there, we then can just use general philosophy. Okay, my mind is a faculty that I'm going to rely on to observe the world.
Right. You're going to
Philosophically,
trust your
the
senses.
only, the only, and philosophically, the only thing that explains origin is an uncaused cause.
The only thing. Say that last sentence one more time. The only thing that is what?
The only thing that would explain origin is an uncaused cause. Now, whether that cause has consciousness, etc., that's all secondary. I'm saying when we're starting from nothing, starting from nothing. The uncaused cause is the starting
Well,
point.
is that's not the only conclusion you can come to there. There's actually multiple that are just as likely there, right? Because you either there's an uncaused cause, there's some aspect of reality that is eternal. Because that's a perfectly good answer too. Um,
But infinite regress, from a philosophical standpoint, is generally rejected. There are people that hold to it, but it's generally rejected. It's like the idea of a chandelier having an infinite chain without a base to hold it into place.
well, so So infinity, like whether infinity works philosophically in that case, I don't think matters. The Because we have no
No, but
comprehending
you have to understand though,
infinity is mm,
philosophy is the root of all of this stuff that we're talking about. That's why when
well,
you go to
no,
get when you go
I
to get
know that. Philosophy is a great tool, and yes, it is at the basis of all of these things. But that's philosophy. Some sort of philosophy is used for all these things. It doesn't mean that philosophy answers anything, because that's not what philosophy does. It's not meant to tell you what's true. It more tells you the things that aren't coherent, right? So we use philosophy to make sure to check that the things that the thoughts, the ideas, the claims that are made, whatever, however you want to put it, we use philosophy to then assess: is that position coherent? Does it logically follow? Does it obey the laws of logic and that stuff? We use philosophy in that way. Philosophy, though, doesn't tell you what's true in that sense. While you do have to
philosophy,
use
but
philosophy,
philosophy.
it is a
No, hold
tool
up.
to
But
support
just
that.
from a historical standpoint, philosophy is the root of everything, science, everything. In fact, that's why when you go back to go and to get further education, the height of education is the PhD, the Doctor of Philosophy.
Well, I don't disagree with you. All I'm saying is that you can also misuse the tool of philosophy. I'm not saying that it's not used in those things. It absolutely is. It's in fact, you can't have a position on anything without philosophy. Like it's
Sure.
so yeah, I agree with you in some sense of it, but I don't. I don't think philosophy, though, can be used to prove anything true. It doesn't do that. That's not its job. It just tells you whether that is coherent. It doesn't tell you whether it's actually a part of reality, right? Like you can have a coherent thought. One of the ones is like some people make the many worlds argument. You can have a coherent thought about that without it actually being true, because philosophy doesn't
No,
tell you what's true.
you hear me right now. The branch of philosophy that started all philosophy is called metaphysics,
Yeah,
right? Which is the nature of reality, and epistemology, right?
sure.
So philosophy is
Yeah,
epistemology is the philosophy of understanding and knowing, right? So philosophy is at the root of understanding or knowing anything at all.
right. Okay. That doesn't
So I'm saying
whether
when
it
I
does
come
the
to
root
God,
of
when I come to
understanding it, though, philosophy as a tool does
Mhm.
not tell you what's true. Correct.
I, philosophy determines whether we can know truth, and then we use science is actually a substitute. It came out of philosophy, right?
I
So
agree. I agree.
so we'll use science to observe, right? But again, when we're starting from nothing, again, Descartes, when we're starting from nothing, the
Yeah.
strongest argument to start from nothing is to start from a philosophical standpoint. The unmoved mover has been, sorry, I keep losing you here, but that the unmoved mover is basically the root of what I'm getting at, because I'm saying that unmoved mover is not
All right. So
just
I
some
I
like loosey
I lost you at that unmoved mover
uh,
is.
position. This is the starting point from when. So I did want to. Do you still hear me there? Do
Yeah.
you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we got a bit of a delay, but yeah. So I agree with you. And I don't. I'm sorry if you're talking, because I think you maybe froze. Um, I,
Okay.
I agree with you that philosophy is at the root of that, and that these things are actually branches of the result of philosophy. But philosophy as a tool, if you're carrying, I know philosophy and your epistemological bag of tools, right? Like philosophy, though, does not. It doesn't tell you what's true. It tells you what's logically coherent, right?
What do you use to determine truth? I'm trying to understand here, because That's hence the scientific method is a philosophical. It's a theory, right?
So
Which is based in philosophy. It's a form of
so
philosophy.
while you use your own philosophical positions to determine what you think is true, it's not philosophy as a tool that tells you what's true. You may use philosophy, and it's needed for that to determine truth, but it's not through philosophical arguments that you determine truth. Philosophy only gets you to the point of this argument is coherent and not fallacious and not contradictory, and like it doesn't get you to any kind of truth. You then are required to make observations and other things to determine the truth. It can tell you what's not true for sure.
All right, now do you hear me?
Yes. So
Okay.
my challenge to you about this, just so you understand where I'm coming from, is use philosophy to show the truth of any claim or any argument, because it doesn't do that.
No, but philosophy, that's what epistemology is.
Sure. So there's other. So right. So there's other tools in your bag that you may use to determine the truth of that. Maybe it's science. Maybe it's some kind of spiritualism. Whatever. Like each
No, I'm saying, but
person has.
epistemology is under the umbrella of philosophy. It's one of the three main branches of philosophy. Epistemology is the aperture through which we understand anything.
Right. Right. Again, it's not that philosophy isn't at the root of these things and involved. It's just that you have to use these other tools also in order to determine the truth of things, because philosophy by itself does not do that. You have to then even though you're still within the realm of doing philosophical things, because there's not really a way to avoid that if we're thinking about anything. You're using philosophy.
But hold up,
Anything.
this is sure. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
So the whole basis by which you would trust the scientific method is that you philosophically believe that that is a reliable source of knowledge. That if
Yes.
you're using to prove that, when I use philosophy to prove God, it's using the same line of logic, right? I'm using
No.
philosophy that no, I am. So hold up. I'm using the same line of logic, which is how can we understand things, and from an epistemological standpoint, how certain can we be that we know this? And I'm saying, if you're saying you're certain because of the scientific method and empiricism after that, that proves that how you got to the scientific method as being reliable, but you're still using epistemology to prove it, which
No.
epistemology is the same aperture that you'd use for any source of knowledge. Forget religion,
I,
any source of
I,
knowledge.
I agree with that. That even whenever you use those other tools, that philosophy is still at the root of those tools. But you have to have more than philosophy, right? There has to be more than just it's coherent and it logically follows. You need more than that to determine whether a claim is true. I can give you a syllogism for something that's not true, but it is still sound. It doesn't.
But you're arguing from reason, right? And reason is again under philosophy, but it's not all of philosophy.
Right, because there's other things that you can pull into how do you reason is based on the epistemological tool set that you use, right?
Sure.
So that's really whenever we say that like something this works philosophically or whatever, that that's a good step, but I think that that's the most basic thing. Like that's the first thing
So
you
then
need to know.
you would want
Like,
something empirical to support it,
well,
right? Something
no.
observational.
What? No. In fact, one of the things I say to people is because you have a lot of atheists that are like, yeah, you got to bring me evidence of God. Like that's not. Sure, I would love to have evidence that I can observe and repeat and all that shit. Like I would love to have that, but give me any reason is what I say. Like because I understand that there's more going on there than just the one tool set of the scientific method, right? That we can look at other tool sets and say, well, give me your reasoning.
Sure.
How do Yeah.
But my starting point again, like the uncaused cause is a reason. The idea that morality is objective is a reason. For instance, another example, Math, it's conceptual, it's abstract, it's causally inert, meaning that it doesn't have any power within reality. It just explains the power that we're seeing, right? Where it explains how processes work, physics, etc., right? And so what scientists have discovered as they've learned more about math is that it's infinitely complex. And something that is infinite would be beyond that which is a finite being, aka ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why most mathematicians, in fact, the third greatest mathematician in the world is writing a book on this.
Well, you wanted to throw infinity out a minute ago, right?
But no, hold up. No, infinity from a natural cause, yes, which is what I'm getting at here. So
Yeah.
my point with math is if it's conceptual and it isn't of human design, which again, most mathematicians today agree that math was discovered, not invented. My question would be then, if math was discovered and not invented, if it's conceptual and not physical, then whose concept is it?
Does it need that though? I don't think it does.
So
I don't think that's required.
The universe has operated. So like even the Big Bang and everything operated within this realm of how we understand math. That's how we're able to date this part's not my area of expertise, but like the red wavelengths that we're able to observe to prove the Big Bang and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're using math to do that. So if the universe is operating on math from the get-go, that means math predates it.
Well, no. All that means is that our universe has properties that are static, that we're able to depend on those being static, that we're able to then use to assign meaning to numbers and all the abstraction that goes on to get.
No, but you're again assuming that humans created math, which I told you most mathematicians don't believe we created it, we discovered it. Because so for instance, there's this guy. Man, I'm trying to remember his name, but he basically posited the idea of the positron through this equation. I think it's called the Dirac equation. He posited this from an equation, and he was dismissed by everybody because at the time they didn't believe that an electron, I believe, could have a negative charge. And it wasn't proved until years later that that was true and that his equation was correct. And so math pointed to something that existed outside of human understanding. And it has numbers in it that are infinite. In fact, we're still discovering how far pi can go down. So this is something we're discovering. It's not something we're inventing. And if it's something we're discovering and it's conceptual, then it means it's somebody's concept.
Well, so I think though that you can still say that we created the system of numbers which we use for math. We created that. Now we used those number systems that we built on for generation after generation. We used those number systems to then discover things that were there that we didn't know about. That like we didn't create because math is a language. Math.
No, but hold up. The part of that's not true though, right? So like we created the symbols, sure, but there's no way you could make any other instance because this is just a fact in of itself, regardless of our observation. 1 + 1 is 2. There's no way you can make these two objects in my hand. There's no way you can make these two objects in my hand anything other than that. This and this together equal 2, and that exists. Our symbol creation for math is a human invention, but math itself is discovered. It has been discovered. We are observing the world and discovering math.
Well, still, I think that math is just the language that we use to describe the world that we're discovering, right? Like I don't think I think that you go a step too far to say that math is this already existing thing, and we just because math doesn't like whenever we use math
but it does exist because the universe operates on it.
Well, the math doesn't. Those things exist in the universe, and math is the language that we use to describe those things. It's not that.
But it's more than that because it's predicting that which is unknown to us.
Well, no, we use math to do that. We don't we use math to make those predictions, but it's not the math that you're discovering. Math is just the language that's used to describe those properties. Whenever, like in
No, but
theoretical
it's more than
physics,
it's more than just language, because it's like, it's again, the better description of it is code, because it operates in an exact way. It's not language. Language is fluid. Math is exact. So it operates in an exact code, and all code has a programmer.
well, language can be exact. Just because,
We can try to make it exact, but language is
well,
fluid. That's why language evolves over time. Math doesn't evolve over time. Math is math.
sure it does. Sure it does.
Our understanding of math evolves, but math has never evolved.
Right. Yeah. So right. I don't know how, because there's no real way I don't accept that math existed. I accept that the things that we use math to describe were already in many cases there, or gonna not there yet, and that we've used this language of numbers that we have to describe the universe. I
But we're
don't
not just
think that.
describing. We're using something that's been pre-programmed to understand that which we don't understand. It's different than if
Well,
you. It's different because it can predict. So it's
that's
more than just language. It has predictive qualities of things we're ignorant of. It's
well.
embedded code, because the only way, if it was just describing, it would just be purely explanatory. But it's more than purely explanatory. It has it's excuse me. It's more than just explanation, because it has the ability to be predictive for that which we are ignorant of. Language can't do that. Again, it's code.
Well, science has the scientific method has the ability to be predictive, and you could say that the scientific method already existed and we discovered it. You could do that with a number of things if you, because the
No,
way,
the scientific method can be wrong, right?
well,
Because or let me phrase that. The scientific method can be used to come to wrong conclusions. Math inevitably is always true. It's always correct. It's always math.
well, I mean, no, it's no, because we can mathematically show that white holes exist, right? But that doesn't mean that they do. Um, we
I'm
can
not
we
familiar with
can
that area, so I can't speak to that.
you can show things mathematically that don't necessarily comport with reality. Like just because you prove that it's possible, it's not a contradiction mathematically, doesn't mean that it actually does exist. So
No, but you're
math can
talking
do the
about.
same thing.
No, because things, just because things don't exist in the material world, don't mean they don't exist in the conceptual world, right? Math
Well,
is
that's
always
yeah.
correct in its conceptual understanding of reality. Like, math never can be wrong. It's always math.
Hmm. I I don't.
Because things, because
I mean,
you have
it's not
thoughts,
that I
but you have
disagree with that. I just don't know that it helps you any.
no, because you have thoughts, right? You objectively, we know. Well, I guess we don't know unless we agree on what we can know. But you have thoughts. Those are conceptual. They exist. That doesn't mean that they have to be material in order to exist. Your thoughts still exist. Math is
But did I
conceptual, which
discover those thoughts?
you created them. Which
Right.
is my point. Which is my point. Math is conceptual, meaning it's somebody's concept. But since we discovered it, it means it's not our concept. So it's somebody's concept.
No, I think that assumes that everything has to be designed. I mean, I know that you believe that position, but I think in that argument that you can't just insert it in there though, right? Like,
I don't know. So again, if math is conceptual and it is something we discovered outside of ourselves, whether or not you agree
okay.
with this is where most mathematicians are. If that is the case, then math has to be somebody's concept. Like, your thoughts are your thoughts.
Yes, but see the thing with math though is like math doesn't, as a concept, 1 + 1 = 2 is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't need to be created under the it's one of those things that, like, whenever we created the symbols, which you agree we created those,
Yes.
they have certain meanings, so therefore they have to, 1 plus 1 has to equal 2 under the definition of the symbols that we've put
The
forth.
symbols are the descriptive part. That's why we're communicating with each other, because the symbols are the descriptive part. But math exists beyond the symbols. The symbols are just our description of the reality. And the
Well,
reality, but the reality is a concept that exists outside of humanity.
I still think you have to say that I just disagree with you. I
Okay.
think that you have to say that math is what we created to describe the world around us. The things, like, we created math to be able to describe the things that we observe in the natural world. Um, I don't think that it existed. Like, you could say the color blue existed before, and in fact, blue is one of those colors that actually didn't exist before a certain time period. But, like, because we hadn't, but it's not because blue has some, you know, universal standing or whatever. It's just we
But that's the
haven't
difference, though, because
assigned.
math does have that universal standing.
Well, we just hadn't assigned a name to that shade of blue. Now, once we assign a name to that shade of blue, then you mix blue with this other color, makes this. That's true before you ever do it, and you don't
So
need to do any of that.
that's
But
actually, I
until
agree
you
with that.
understand,
No, but I agree with that. So like we are observing blue and giving it a name, but the blue still exists independent. We didn't create blue. We created
right,
the idea and the name of blue, but we didn't create blue.
right, we started calling this shade of thing blue. So in math, we said this. I have one thing, and we called it. This is one. This
Sure.
and in math, zero wasn't a thing before, right? That came later. It wasn't
Zero is a
until
placeholder of nothing. It's a placeholder
right.
of nothing.
It wasn't until modern times that people started using zero, and math actually has, like, we've refined our understanding of math,
No,
right?
that's important what
So
you just said. We refined our understanding of math. But
yes,
math
yes.
has an independent truth outside of us.
Yes, because of the language, that math is, right?
No,
So
because just because we weren't using symbols correctly, or we developed symbols and stuff like that, and those have evolved, our descriptive terms have evolved, but the math itself has never evolved.
well, it's because we gave uh, we gave these symbols definitions that were precise. One is this one thing, and then we later came decimals and all that. But, like, this one thing, and we call it one. And then if I have two one things, then we call that two. And because of those rules that we use for those symbols, that the math itself then becomes. It's inevitable that 1 plus 1 is 2 because of the definition that we've gave those symbols, and math is based on the natural world itself, so it has to comport to the natural world. It's one of those things that's required of math before you even get started, right? Like, it becomes inevitable because we created it that way.
No,
um,
but we didn't create it. We are only using descriptive terms with our math to describe a reality that exists
the
beyond our
Right,
descriptive
right.
terms.
But the fact that math works just shows that our language is good, right? It just shows that language that we're using is correct.
No,
It doesn't.
but language itself isn't predictive.
Well, right. It's
Language
the
is not
formulas
predictive.
and things you do with the math that is, but
The
those
math
those
itself is predictive. Our language of the math is not predictive. The math
those
itself is predictive.
it shows that those definitions that we gave those things continue to work in order to describe those things. Hey,
But yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, I've got a hard stop here because we have to redirect over to Dave's channel over at Captive Desk for Saturday Night at the Atheist.
Sure.
You can go over there and check that out too. They'll talk to you and stuff, answer any questions you got. It's a really good show, but it'll send everybody there as soon as I close this down. He started at 5 o'clock. I'm stepping on his toes a little bit. But hey, Brandon, I really appreciate you coming and talking to me. It was a great conversation.
For sure.
And I would talk to you every week if you wanted to. I think that even though we didn't necessarily really make it anywhere in our conversation, I don't expect that we really will. I mean, I'm not saying we can't, but like I think it was a good conversation, and I think that we discussed things more than just relied on our arguments. But I hate that. I really do hate because I feel like atheism and atheism activism has this spot where it's gotten to where what everybody thinks it is some atheist on here telling a Christian that they're wrong about everything and stuff. And I think that there's way more interesting stuff to talk about than we can talk about some of the arguments. I would really like to get into the fine tuning and the Paley stuff that you mentioned. I would like to get into talk about those. I'd love to have you back again if you can do it. I think we had an interesting conversation.
Yeah, man.
So of course I've got your email and stuff, and I'll get in touch with you, and we'll try to set up something again. I would love to have you come back and do a part 2, 3, and 4 of this where we can really dig deep into some of those positions, because we kind of highlighted the things we didn't agree on and talked vaguely about it. But like I'd like to kind of go both ways with it. And why do you think that this holds true, and why do I not accept it, and why do I think this about certain things that you don't accept? I would love to dig deeper into that stuff. I think it's a good conversation for everybody.
Amen, brother. Well, I appreciate it.
All right. Well, so first of all, I know I didn't interact with chat a lot today. I wanted to give Brandon my attention, and so I haven't talked to you guys a lot, but I love all you guys, and thank you for coming and watching. If you're new here or whatever, it would really help out the channel if you hit a like there or subscribe or whatever. We got memberships if you want them for 99 cents. I do that once a week. I do a member stream and sit down and talk. Sometimes those are 4, 5, 6 hours long, but and we do open panels and stuff here. And that's maybe sometime we can have you on for an open panel where we can have some other people join.
I think that would be really, really good to do that. And just one last thing, just so next time we have a discussion, really look into the Big Bang and the origin thing that I was talking about. Because the time and space thing, I am like 100% positive that is the common consensus today.
And I tell you this, I'm very honest about those things, and I will go look at that. And if whatever the outcome is, we'll either talk about it again, or I'll make a post saying that I was wrong about that thing. I'm very honest when it comes to that stuff. So
I appreciate your search for the truth, brother. For real, I appreciate it.
And I don't care to be wrong about things. It's fine.
We're just looking for the truth. We're both just looking for the truth. I hear you.
Yeah, but thank you so much for your time, and thank you everybody for coming. I will see you next time, and go over and give Dave a like and subscribe while you're over there, guys. You got in. By the way, Reverend Brandon Hendricks, his information is tagged in the title and in the description, so you can go over and check out his channel and subscribe. It's a newer channel. He's working on building it. Go listen to things he has to say and interact with him just the way I did. I've seen one of his videos and just left a comment saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you," and here we are. So that works. But yeah, go over and check him out. Show him some love. And we'll have him come back again. A great guest and a great conversation. But I'm out of here. Have fun at Dave's, guys. Later.
All right, see you.